Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with more hip hop news and another Inside the Scope edition as well. So, inside the scope today, I will be talking about Pusha T and the lost art of lyricism. So, Pusha T is not a flashy rapper. He doesn't make a lot of appearances. He just gives you pure hip hop and pure lyricism. And he's very underrated in the way because he's not flashy, similar to what a Lil Wayne or Drake is, or even to some aspects of Kendrick Lamar is. Because up until Kendrick Lamar's GNX album and the beef with Drake that he had started last summer, a lot of people didn't notice Kendrick Lamar, or he was under the radar, so to speak, unless you were a hip hop fan or a purist. Now, Kendrick, Pusha T had a beef with Drake as well, which I get into in a little bit. But he didn't ascend like Kendrick Lamar did because he didn't make a hit like Kendrick Lamar did with Not Like Us. Now, if Kendrick just dropped Euphoria and songs like Euphoria, he probably never ascended like that as well. But that Not Like Us put him over the top, and Not Like Us is seen as one of the biggest diss songs in history. And to the fact that he mentioned Drake by name was another thing that sent the whole world into a frenzy. Because usually on these songs they're very subliminal and not direct, but he was very direct on this song and dissed a lot of different people in that song. But Kendrick, but Pusha T didn't do that. He was more abstract and more subliminal. So that was the difference between the two. But after listening to the new song that the Clips released, um, Ace Trumpets from their upcoming album Let God Sort 'Em Out, I had time to reflect on the greatness of just Pusha T over his career. And his relationship with his brother, used to be called Malice, but now it's No Malice. They've had a great run and great consistency, and most people argue that No Malice is a better rapper than Pusha T. But of course, No Malice took a hiatus from music to do, to work on his religion and things like that, which is very admirable. And I think he missed the game a lot and he wanted to come back. But Pusha T was still consistent and continued to ascend. And his last two projects were the best projects he's released in his career. So he's only getting better, I believe. Um, and I didn't just realize the greatness of Pusha T after the Drake beef and the last two albums. I've been listening to him since the clip days, since grinding. If anybody grew up around, the early 2000s when you're in middle school, like I was in high school during that time, everybody was, making the grinding beat on the kitchen. I mean, not the kitchen, but the cafeteria tables during lunch at school, and everybody was freestyling off of it. And that's my earliest earliest memories of clips. From beating on the table in the lunchroom, trying to make that beat, and everybody's rapping off of it. And it was classic times. Kids, I don't know, I don't think they do it nowadays, but nevertheless, I've been listening to clips and for Pusha T for a long time. But Pusha T has other, several great songs, where it be, Sweet Serenade with Chris Brown, Drug Dealers Anonymous with Jay-Z, Circles with Ty Dollars and Designer. But one of my favorite tracks from Pusha T is not a song that made an album. I believe it was on a mixtape, but that Exodus 23:1, which is direct, diss to Drake, Birdman, and Lil Wayne. And he covered all of that. He had the famous line, "I was really in that Travel Lodge. You just lying in your catalogs." He had that famous, disses towards them, and you can't fly without your wings. Talk about making reference to Birdman, and he was one of the first people to say, "You one dude to sign to another dude, to sign to another dude. Now that's bad luck." Now he was one of the first persons to mention that because Drake is signed to Lil Wayne and Lil Wayne is signed to Birdman. So he was one of the first persons to do that, and he made a lot. He was one of the first people to actually, make a public beef with Birdman, other than Rick Ross, about the contracts and how they was doing Lil Wayne wrong and how he was taking all his money off of people. But Pusha T was one of the first people to do that, and he made reference to that in that Daytona album, in the Infrared song, I believe, when he said that now it's okay to kill baby, but dudes looked at me crazy like I would really kill the baby. So he made a lot of references to that camp, and for some reason he had a beef uh, with Lil Wayne going all the way back, and Lil Wayne made a tweet saying "F Pusha T and anybody who loves him," which was a random tweet, but it just showed their disdain for each other. But Pusha T has never lost a battle, and he was the first person to beat Drake in the beef, especially when Drake beat Meek Mills in the beef because he didn't respond really. But nevertheless, Pusha T was the first to do it. He kind of set the blueprint for Kendrick to do it. And I believe, Kendrick and Pusha T have a lot of respect for each other because of that. And Pusha T talked about, or Clips talked about, how they had to leave their label because the label didn't want to put out a song with Drake and with Pusha T and Kendrick Lamar on the same song because it was going to perceive their way, and then that lawsuit that's currently going on. So there's a whole ordeal around that. So I like the connection between Kendrick Lamar and Pusha T because they're the same type of lyricism, different content matter for sure, because Kendrick is more a activist type, social conscious type rapper, and Pusha T, of course, talks about pushing stuff, so to speak. But um, Pusha T has some amazing features as well on the Mercy song with Kanye West and the whole Good Music crew that they have. He also has the amazing feature Maybe with Teyana Taylor and Yo Gotti, which both of them didn't appear in the video, but it's a great song. He has amazing, just amazing. Anytime he's on a verse, I'm listening to it because he just does what he does. But one of his biggest turning points, I think, in his career when I started to notice him, even though it was a freestyle on Hot 97, which was actually a song that they did, and Kanye's freestyle was on the song as well that they already had written already before, and it wasn't really a freestyle. But I started to notice Pusha T's lyrical ability on that freestyle from the Hot 97, which it was a crazy freestyle when you hear it. I believe it has 9 million or 5 million views right now on YouTube. But he showed to me he was more than just a trapper. He was a lyrical or a lyricist that happens to rap about the trap, which is a big difference. Because a lot of those trappers don't have, it's about production and all these different things. But Pusha T can put out an album a cappella, and I will listen to it because that's just how his flow is and how his rhyme scheme is set up. He's very detailed and very intricate in his writing, and he says that as well on when he makes reference to his lyricism. But his intellectualism and his lyricism for a trapper is up there with Jay-Z. It's not many rappers that you can put up there. It's Jay-Z, and then there's Pusha T, and then there's pretty much everybody else as far as that goes. If I'm leaving somebody out, I'm not thinking about it right now, but those two are definitely up there as far as lyricism goes and as far as the subject matter that they talk about, because there's not a lot of sophistication in that realm when it comes to that. And I think Jay-Z realizes Pusha T's lyricism, and I think that's why he has a lot of songs with Pusha T, because not just from the connection that they both have with Pharrell, because we know that Pusha T and Clips have an amazing relationship with Pharrell. They're working on a new album right now with them that's releasing, I believe, July 11th. But I think that Jay-Z sees a little of himself in Pusha T, especially lyricism wise, not business wise, of course, but just lyricism and what he loves about this, loves about the genre of hip hop. But you know, um, like I talked about before, Pusha T's last two solo projects have done the best. One of them, which is Almost Dry, the last one, charted #1 on the U.S. Billboard, and then the other album, Daytona, I think it peaked at #3 on the chart. So the other two didn't chart as well, but the last two projects have been amazing with features, production, and just strategic placing of everything. Even though the Daytona album only had 7 songs, but it was classic songs and it was very concise, which most of us fans love. Don't give me, 20 songs and then only like 2 or 3 of them. That's a huge fail. But if you come out with 7 songs and I like 4 or 5 of them, that's a better odds. So I think I like that better. But nevertheless, I'm excited to hear the new Clips project and, of course, upcoming projects from Pusha T. And as always, until next time, I'll see you next time.